What's up, Central Illinois? Derek Hayden here. Garrett and I love sharing all the awesome stories about our Central Illinois business leaders. We want to make sure our Central Illinois businesses are protected so we can continue to share all these great stories. That's why you should consider another great Central Illinois company, Pekin Insurance, for your business insurance needs. That's right. You can get all the commercial insurance coverages that your company needs from an excellent insurance company headquartered right here in Pekin, Illinois. Pekin Insurance offers comprehensive business coverage that lets you focus on what's important to you: employees, profits, and peace of mind. Ask your local Pekin Insurance agent about their commercial insurance products or learn more at pekininsurance.com. You can also contact your favorite podcast hosts, Garrett or myself, Derek, and we'll go beyond the expected for you.
Welcome to the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast, where business owners, thought leaders, and community champions from across Central Illinois come to share their story. The Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. Anything less would be uncivilized.
What's up, Central Illinois? I'm Derek Hayden. I'm here with Garrett Ulmer. We are your hosts for the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast, powered by Zambu. Zambu is a delicious grapefruit oral wildberry vodka-based spirit infused with a Brazilian buzz button. It's smooth, tasty, and leaves you with a signature tingle. Learn more at ZambuLiquors.com. Zambu, taste the tingle. All right, Central Illinois, we are joined today by the owner of Probst Auto Body in Dieterich and Flora. Mark, did I leave any locations out?
Nope, that's it so far, sir.
Okay, perfect. He's also, as far as I know, a triathlete, correct, Mark?
It is. I try to be a triathlete. Yes, absolutely.
He tries to do tries. Ladies and gents of Central Illinois, please welcome to the show, Mark Probst. How you doing, Mark?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing very good, man. Hey, we're excited to have you on the show. We see your face on auto body magazines all over the world, and we've got to learn about your story here, Mark. So before we do that, I'm going to kick it over to Garrett. He's going to ask you a few questions and take you through our speed round.
Let's do it.
All right. So we've got 5 questions we're going to ask you. Okay. Anybody that is willing to do triathlons, you've got to be super interesting to everybody out there. So I'm sure the answers are going to be great. Okay.
Okay. No pressure.
First concert you ever attended?
Def Leppard when I was 15 years old.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Very young and saw that opened my eyes because I was from a very small town and was very shocked at what I all saw, but it was a great concert at the same time.
I bet it was eye-opening for sure.
For sure.
Favorite movie?
Oh, we were just talking about this last night. I like movies. I'm not like a TV guy, but as the one we were just talking about with my son going to college, I said it'd have to be the Shawshank, getting sucked into Shawshank. And I said,
oh, nice.
A lot of good movies, but I said there's the story behind that one always pulls me in, like no matter what. Like it's such a, from what happened, the guy getting thrown in jail for a murder he didn't commit and how he ended up, like it was just, I don't know. That one always gets my heart, I guess you'd say.
I agree. Every time that's on, it's hard for me to pass over. My wife's like, how many times are you going to watch this? I'm like, it's like you get into it and just can't get out,
Yeah, somebody told me they called it getting shanked. You got shanked again. Like
there you go.
Yeah. So.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, I'm not a huge ice cream guy, but I'm pretty simple as far as that goes. And I'll just stick with plain old vanilla. Like of all things, that's probably most simplest one.
Gotcha. Are you an iPhone or Android guy?
iPhone, yes. Started with Android and eventually got switched over to. I don't care as long as I know how to use it and it's simple. That's my biggest thing.
Yeah, I think that's where iPhone wins, just the simplicity of it for sure.
Absolutely.
So, favorite social media platform?
Oh, favorite. I'm old school. I'd just have to say Facebook is still my really only. We have a lot with our business, but I just can't get myself engaged. And honestly, sometimes I think one's too many. But
yeah,
I'm still going to have to go with Facebook on that one.
Gotcha. And last but not least, why Central Illinois?
Why Central Illinois? For me, small farm town kid, born and raised here, and it was just never even dreamed of leaving. So I said it's where I grew up, and this is where we're at. So
gotcha. Well, that's great.
I love it. Well, thanks, Mark. Appreciate you sharing that. And you were a little smoother than some people have been on those questions. So nice work. So what we'll do next, Mark, if you could, for our listeners and followers, just give us a rundown of your story. So where you're from, you mentioned small farm boy, small farm town boy.
Sure.
Tell us about how you grew and how you started your business and how you got to where you are today.
Oh gosh. So where I'm from, we call a little town called Bishop Creek. So it's outside of Effingham County. Grew up on a farm farming. I didn't mind it, but I never really had a desire to farm. It was just work. So went to Teotopolis High School, Teotopolis School District. And for me, it was very unique. I knew I wanted to work on cars. My oldest brother he's 6 years older than me, was going into the mechanic side of things. And I said, when I was in high school, I was like, okay, I want to work on cars. I just knew that, which I followed the auto body side of it. And so that was probably one of the easiest decisions I ever did. It just, cars seemed natural. I like cars. So after graduating high school, well, I got a job the day after I graduated high school, I started working at F&M truck sales, working on semis in the body shop, detailing. And then that summer, come the next fall, I started college at Olney Central College for their auto body program. So
nice.
For the next 2 years was a combination of driving to Olney, driving back to Effingham, working every night, and then going home, sleeping, and doing the same thing. Like, it was just nonstop because I didn't stay at college. I didn't live there. So it was just, and then I had a job that I kind of liked. So that's how it all started.
Nice.
Eventually at Effingham Truck Sales, I got moved from the detail department to the body department, and then ended up painting for the last 6 years. So I started there when I was 17 years old, and I stayed there for a long time of 9 years, and quit when I was 26 years old and went out to start my own business.
Nice. So, and where your location is right now in Dieterich, is that where you started, or did you start smaller and grow into that location?
Yeah, so we started in a little building across town. It was part of the old Schultz Seed Company. So I leased the building for the first 4 years. So a smaller building, old building. And I opened by myself. It was just me, myself, and I that did everything. I knew nothing about accounting, knew nothing about marketing, nothing about business. I barely knew how to fix a car, right? So, but I was in business and it was mine, and 26 years old, and honestly was just had to start somewhere. And it was, I say that at those days I was too dumb or not educated enough to know any better. So just started rolling with the punches, A year and a half into it, I hired my first employee. And we was at that building for 4 years until we built the new location where it's still at today.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Is nice. Where that background all led to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you first started, it was just you didn't have any other employees?
No. And that's very complicated working on cars, because there's some things you couldn't do by yourself. And my wife will tell you, I don't like to ask for help to a default. And I had to get help to hang hoods or move beds or like large stuff. And so it was very challenging in those. And, there's a lot of good people out there willing to help you. And I said, that was a lesson. And I still have a hard time with that lesson, because I always want to do it myself. And it's a hard, being in business, you got to realize that you have to be able to, number one, ask for friends, get help. And, then you got the employee side of it as far as hiring help and delegating. That's a whole nother story, challenge. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So as a 26-year-old going into business, what made you want, I guess, what was the thing that made you want to start your own business instead of stay with your, I guess, W-2 job or your safe, kind of your safe job, and going on your own?
So a couple things led to that. And we joke about the good with the bad. Like, people hear the success and they hear all the fun stuff, but they also don't hear the other stuff that goes with that. Now, the first part of that is I started working on people's cars at night. Now, I love the old muscle cars restoration, so I would take on, and I kind of liked having money too. So I started doing stuff for people at night, and it was so rewarding because it was just me and my reputation, and I just could fix something, paint something. Some were little projects, some were projects that took me a long time, and then I got paid for it. And I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. Like, it's all me, like, it's just me. So that had been going on for the past 5-6 years of doing side work. Just out of my shed, right? So that's, to answer your question, that's how it started. The second part to your question, as far as what came about, was I tell the story. I tell the CEO. I tell this. I didn't share this story for a lot of years, and it's humbling, and yet there's such a life lesson here. And I don't know. I don't think I've known Derek for a while, but I don't think I've ever shared this with you. So two things happened that made really. I thought I might do that the rest of my life, just side jobs and make extra money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the time, two things happened. I was working at the truck dealership, and there were things that going on there I didn't agree with, and I was young and cocky, and I just didn't like it, and I couldn't. There were several times I spoke up, and I was just kind of shoved aside. So I didn't like what I was seeing there, and I was frustrated because I couldn't change it, and I didn't feel like they was open for my opinion. So that was going on, and at the same time, where I live at in T-Town is where I was doing my side. I had a neighbor, me and him didn't see eye to eye on me working at night in my shed every night. And to give you the clean version of that, it got ugly. Let's just say it got ugly between me and him. And as far as even, I'll tell you, like even getting the town board involved, and the mayor, a visit from the mayor, being threatened to call the cops and EPA on me. So this was happening and this was my hobby. This was my hobby, it was this. So my job that I was kind of on, and then my neighbor who was just being a real challenge to me. And honestly, looking back, those two things is what really helped me make my decision to start my own business. I was done with it. I was done with what I was seeing, and I had no say or no control over it. My neighbor pushing me to my limits, that happened, and I started my own business. And at the time, if you had asked me that, I said it was been the two biggest, hardest things going on in my life. Looking back now, I would say those are two gifts that were gave to me, because if it wasn't for those gifts, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And also, I can tell you, both of any of the people that was involved in those, where it's all smooth over, and we get not that we see each other a lot, but everything's totally cool with it, and I have respect.
Sure.
It happened at the right time for the right reason to lead me down the path that I'm leading. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. That sounds like, a lot of people could have taken it the wrong way and just fought it tooth and nail and just been negative about the whole situation. But you were able to spin that in a positive way and say, all right, this is my sign to let's go ahead and start my own gig, get on my own, get away from the shed, start my own business in a shop in town. It sounds like that's the type of situation where a lot of people would probably look the direction that you didn't look, Mark. They would say, okay, I'm either have to stop my hobby, or I'm going to have to, it's going to be unhappy at my job, or whatever happens to be. But you used it as a opportunity.
Sure. Yep. I did. And it's one of those things you look back on life. And I said, I didn't realize it for a while, but as I grew and the more training I got, and we was talking about reading, the more reading I did, I was like, I looked at it like there's things happen for a reason. And a lot of times the bad stuff is what's leading you towards something better. And I said, that's exactly what happened in my case.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I tell my kids that all the time. You have to fight through the bad to get to the good.
Mm-hmm. And it's just easier when you're helping coach somebody versus when it's happening to you.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Sure. I feel like, Garrett, we could start like the Jerry Springer episodes and say, well, we'd like to welcome in Mark's old neighbor. He comes in, Garrett.
Yeah. I won't go into details of what all happened during some of those conversations, but that's where we'll leave it at the rated version. We'll cut that stuff out. But
yeah, that works just fine.
There's more to be told to that story, but there's some of that stuff that's probably best left unsaid at that point.
The positive about it is there was a problem and you found a solution and made it work, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. Totally. So you said about a year and a half into, you started your body shop at 26 on your own, no help, doing every task that the business had to offer. Sure. Finally got your first person into the business as an employee. What was that, a kind of a secretarial position, or was it more of a body shop position?
I actually hired somebody going to college for auto body. So I hired, it was a technician, and he was young, he was 20 years old. So, I realized was a huge help. Like, even at his level, I was there and we worked side by side. So I said I realized how the value of an employee can help you, because you couldn't get everything done all day. Realizing working by yourself in this situation, how many sales guys, how many phone calls. Like I'd have to work 12 hours a day to get 4 hours of work done. So
Yeah.
that was just kind of the where I saw things start to change just a little bit.
Sure. I would imagine. I would say that would took a little bit of the load. Then you could actually, be more of a, I want to say, a business owner rather than a business practitioner. Start to expand your business, get more work done.
Yeah, that took about another 5 years. I'm a slow learner, guys. So that took about another 5 years to get to that point. There's another, I won't say a story behind that, but what led me to where I am today for sure.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
So now you said it was about 4 years into you starting, and then you built your building where you're at now, your main location.
Yep. Yeah, and I was
then,
still pretty much clueless, but I guess people like me. I kept getting more and more work. So the money still wasn't. There wasn't money. I mean, whatever I was making, it wasn't, like I said, as far as the finances, not like we was getting rich or anything. I was always very diligent about money, and then we built a new building, and it was one of those like hope and pray it works type of deal. So then that was a whole nother game changer because I had a pretty good overhead, pretty good debt going on, and there wasn't. You had to make it work,
Sure. Yeah. So, Mark, obviously what industry Garrett and I are in. We're in the insurance industry.
Sure.
So I will tell you one of the least favorite things that I do in my daily job is work with insurance adjusters. And I know that is what you do day in and day out when it comes to auto body claims. So I guess kind of a two-part question. How did you start into that process without ever doing that before and kind of moving into, now you're dealing day to day with insurance adjusters? And two, how can listeners, if they ever find themselves needing body work and going through the claim process, you as a body shop owner, what are some recommendations you have of how to make that process as smooth as possible between the body shop, the adjuster, and the customer?
So let me repeat that. So your first question is basically, how did I first learn to get into the, or
yes, how did you first handle that? Yes.
So what I realized was backing up there, I had to get involved in I got involved in different groups and different associations, and also lots of training to start developing skills, start seeing what was going on in the industry. And that's where I started learning different skill sets and looking at things a different way. So that first happened as far as learning to deal with insurance adjusters, how to handle them, how, the wording, the education of it, because at the end of the day, we're the professionals that fix the cars. We're liable for those cars. And I have nothing against an insurance adjuster, but they're not trained like we are. They're not the ones actually fixing a car. They might tell you they're trained, but they're still the guys that's just doing paperwork.
Right.
So again, for me, that was just lots and lots of training. It's ongoing. It's every day. I sent guys last week to Chicago for more negotiation training. And then your second question was, repeat that, please.
After, with all your experience, if I'm a customer, I just had to, find myself in a situation where I needed some body work. How do I put myself in the best situation to make that a smooth process between the body shop, the adjuster, and me as the customer?
So for the customer, what we advise, I'll say this, and not, you got to find somebody to work with that you trust. And I'm not saying it has to be us or anybody else, but what I found out on our situation is what we found out, like we will go to bat for the customer all day long, every day. What that means is sometimes that we will have to stand up to the insurance company if we disagree with them. What happens when you stand up against somebody that does that? You're not always the number one like guy. You're not the favorite guy. You're not the nice guy anymore. Where I've been called a bully. I've been called, we don't work with insurance companies. And that's not the truth. But what we want to realize is you got to have somebody. If you don't have a shop standing up for the customer, at the end of the day, my insurance companies are not my customer. We work with them. We got to handle the claim. If a shop really gets who their customer truly is, and it's not the insurance company, that's where I'd give it advice. That's when you got a shop that that truly cares. Yeah. And it's just stuff all day long, and there's certain stuff that we can fight for, and there's certain stuff that, hey, if you're you guys in the insurance side of it, if your policy states this is in your policy, then that's not something I can fight. That's something that you agree to. But if it's a case of, using used salvage parts or OEM parts or a calibration needed done, and that, those are the stuff that we stand up and be like, no, this is the right thing to do. And then the last piece of that is the cars are changing every day. I mean, you guys see it. They're self-driving cars. Like all this stuff coming at us, it's new to us. We're studying. I spend a lot of money to send my guys to training every year. So just because what we did 10 years ago or 5 years ago or last year or last month, it ain't the same thing that we're dealing with right now today.
Yeah.
So to find also for a customer to find a shop that's really engaged, really into the industry and involved in the industry, I said that's where they're going to win and get the best service.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like the number one question we get a lot of times too is, do we have to go where the insurance carrier tells us, or does the client have the choice?
Client always has the choice in the end. I mean, I think you guys would agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's where we've like I said, sometimes you got direct repair programs or whatever you call those. If people ever ask me that, it's a catch-22. I've been on both sides of that. I've been on a direct repair program and I've been off of them. Currently, we have no direct repair programs. I felt like it took me a while, but now I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my customer if I sign a contract with an insurance company. And that's what basically is involved. What's that mean to us? That means sometimes a customer is told, hey, here's our preferred shops, or here's our direct repair shops, or, and our name's not mentioned. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, like I realize, like for my customers, I feel like it's the right thing to do.
Sure. Yep. Well, you talked a lot about education and sending your employees for further education. One thing that I see constantly from you, Mark, especially on social media, is you take part in educating your industry as well. So I know that you've been featured in some magazines and won some awards, and I've seen that you speak to groups as well. Tell us a little bit about that experience and what you do on the, I guess, giving back to the auto body industry. Sure. And that's what is the whole industry. And it's like you get what you get, you get what you give and you give back, and I'll always consider myself a student. I'm always looking for more training, for more help, because there are people out there that's been there before me, or people that's better at certain things. And at the same time, as I saw myself go from a one shop, one person, one man band, as you call it, to having two shops, 15 employees, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm still looking at those guys as, hey, these are my mentors. And at the same time, there's a lot of guys that are still in this level that I can help. Part of what you talked about with insurance and adjusters and negotiation and estimate writing, it led me down another path to start giving back. And there's many ways to give back. So some of those are speaking at conferences, this and that. The other thing that I've done, I have a partner, 50-50 partner with Tim Paap, who owns Paap Auto Body. We have another company called Estimating Professionals, and we go out and teach auto body shops, estimating, negotiations, and that kind of stuff. And we felt like there was a gap in the industry. There's really, really like high level guys there's a handful of high level people that are out there teaching. And then there's some low level. There's just a gap that we saw that needed filled. So it's just, like you said, it's once you learn it, you give back, and it's rewarding at the same time. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So when you walk into your shop in Dieterich, if you look on the wall to the right, there's your mug up there's on a magazine cover. Tell us a little bit about, you were in that magazine and what you're in it for. So that one was Fender Bender magazine. It's an auto body publication. It's nationwide. That first story was basically a small town success. And one of the consulting companies, every people lead you and you make connections. One of the consulting companies I was working with, I think they helped facilitate my name and grow about this guy in a town of 600 people. That was starting to grow a pretty, a decent sized business in a town, because one of the challenges they always say is people when they start consulting, people are like, I'm in too small of a town. I can't do, blah, blah. You got all these roadblocks, and so that was the whole story behind that, was small town success for technically Dieterich is a town of, I think the sign says 650 people, and in our industry, we was doing over 1 million sales, right at a little bit over 1 million sales at that time. So I said that was a big number in a town of 600 people.
So that was what that story was about. Yes.
That's
Gotcha.
awesome. That's awesome.
So as far as like growth and expansion, sorry, Derek, I didn't mean to cut
Do
you
your
off.
thing, man.
Nope. Growth and expansion. You've got another shop in Flora, correct?
Yes.
And when did you get into that and decide, hey, I'm ready to take on another venture and open another location?
So it was been on my mind. It was one of those things that you always like your big dreams. Like it always been in the back of my mind for years. I mean, when I say years, like, oh, I wonder if it's like a open second shop. Like it's got to be, it's got to be awesome, and it's a challenge. And so it festered and festered for a long time. There was some things led up to it, and I'd kind of been preparing myself for this for a long time, even though I never was ready. I didn't know when the timing would be. Long story short, one of my guys went out to National Guard, was gone for over a year, and I hired another guy to replace him just for a year. Well, this guy ended up becoming a really good employee. And then I didn't know what I was going to do with him. Like I didn't need an extra employee. So I thought, man, well, if I'm ever going to start a second shop, now would be the time to start a second shop because I got an extra guy and he can come with me. And honestly, that was one of the reasons that I led to the second shop. It's been in the back of my mind for years and years. I talked to the guy, you'll laugh. I talked to the guy 7 years prior, same guy.
Oh, wow.
I gave him a call one day and I said, hey, are you still interested in selling your shop? And he's like, absolutely. A couple visits with him, a handshake, and we was almost to a done deal already. And the second shop was now open. Exciting. Mm-hmm. Yes. Challenging. Absolutely harder than the first shop. Like it's probably one of the hardest things in business I've ever done for several reasons.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Yeah. And I'm sure it's tough because it didn't start with you. There was already different processes, different procedures, different ideas that you have to try to change the ship direction. And I'm sure it's just like the Titanic. You can't turn in a day or in a minute. It's a process, sure. I'm sure.
Yeah. A lot of work, a lot of going from, and there's a difference going from where I was pretty comfortable. I could come and go as I please. I mean, if that meant working 3-4 days a week with lots of freedom, that's what I left and gave up when I started a second shop. And then I was back to the 50-60 hour grinds, sure. Saturdays, Sundays, whatever, because I'm the type of guy, when you commit to something, you commit to it. And so that was a difference. And then for me, it's just a lot of personal growth here too, because it was like having two different families and you're trying to satisfy both of them. So lots of personal challenge going through as far as that as well. Sure. So it's been a very interesting ride. Do I have it figured out? Absolutely not. But it's a lot better than it was 2 years ago when I bought it, put it that way.
Yeah. Nice. So speaking of challenges, we talked about you have done a few triathlons in your day. What in the world would possess someone to want to do a triathlon, first off? And second off, tell us about, your journey and how you fought to train and work it into your busy schedule as a business owner and finish a few triathlons.
Sure. So I'll tell you, the background, I started running when I was like in my mid 30s. It was somebody asked me if I wanted to run, and I was like, sure, absolutely. And oddly enough, I kind of started loving running, and that went on for like 7-8 years of just running. Did 5Ks, and for me, I always I like a challenge to default, and sometimes that doesn't always pay off for me or for my family, but so it was a 5Ks and then a 10Ks, and did my first half marathon, and then then it was the first full marathon, which and I've only done one full marathon. But I always found out when I signed up for a challenge, it was a new challenge, and I commit to it. If I sign up for so I commit to it. So that had been going on for 7-8 years. And after I did the full marathon, I kind of was like, it kind of went on a dry spell for a while. And then when they opened up the new sports complex in Effingham that had the new pool, I got a membership, and I thought, all right, I'm going to try swimming. Like, I don't say try, like I'm not scared of water, but to be not scared of water and to swim is a whole different world.
Sure.
I remember jumping in the pool one day, and I was trying to swim to the other side, and I was like, I was out of breath. I couldn't breathe. And I was like, how do you do this? And I was like, I'm in shape. And I didn't know how to swim. To swim, I guess splashing around in a pool doesn't count as far as being able to swim. I thought I could swim, but I found out I didn't. So then I started wondering, I'm like, damn, I'd like to do a triathlon. I wonder if I could really do this. And ended up like I did with a lot of stuff. I signed up for one that was about 2 or 3 months out, and that forced me to do anything possible to learn to swim. And I didn't even care about the biking. I didn't care about the running. But if I can figure the swim out, then we're solid. So I did my first triathlon, and it was a sprint, the short one, and I was hooked. I was hooked. I was like, this is kind of fun. It's kind of cool. I was never great at running, so I was like, why not try another triathlons where I'm not great at anything, but I like all three of them. So that's
awesome.
how it started.
Uh-huh.
And then from that, like the running, it progressed to the longer distances. I'm like, well, if I can do a sprint triathlon, I wonder if I can do the Olympic, which is double.
Uh-huh.
And then you got the half, what people typically refer to as half Ironmans, and then a full Ironman. So just like the running, one led to the other.
Yeah. Wow.
So how many triathlons have you finished at this point?
Oh, I don't know. I got the medals down there, but I can tell you the ones
too many to count.
The ones that stand out are the 2 half Ironmans and the 1 full Ironman. And back to your question, so it's just for reference for those that don't know, the full Ironman consists of a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike ride, and then a 26.2 mile run.
Wow.
And then all has to be done within 16 and a half hours, typically is the rule. Otherwise, if you don't make it within that time frame, then you're technically you did not finish.
So in 16 hours, you get a nap somewhere in there, right?
Right. Yeah. So I signed up for the full Ironman and started that process in 2018. My agreement with my wife was if I can do a half Ironman and survive and I don't die, then I can maybe do a full one. And I can tell you this, the half Ironman, I think I was like inches away from death at that one. It was 90 degrees out. I didn't train right. I didn't fuel right. Everything that could go. The swim was fine. The bike was fine. I was 4 miles into my run, and my entire body's goosebumps, and I felt like I was going to pass out.
Yeah.
Long story short, I pretty much walked the rest of the course to finish that day, and felt terrible. And literally, there's no way. I've been training 4 months for this. I was like, I don't know. I mean, I can't even imagine what a full's like. This is only half.
Wow.
Luckily, I forget things easily. So about 3 days later, I thought, I felt pretty good. And I was like, I think I can do this. I just got to, what I realized that day, like a lot of stuff with business and life, was the stuff that went wrong that day was what I realized, like, I have to work on this and this and this.
Sure.
I got to train in hard weather. I got to fuel myself different. I got to be a little more serious about this. So then I started training for the next 4 months to prepare for the full Ironman in Louisville, Kentucky, which is what I did.
Wow.
The day went great. I finished in 13 and a half hours. It was rainy that day, a little cold, a little misty. For the most part, I wouldn't want to say it was easier than the half Ironman, but I was well more prepared for that day. Crossed the finish line at 11:30 at night that night. It was so cool. So it's so cool. And then 3 weeks later, I gained 17 pounds and got lazy. And 5 years later, I just signed up for my second Ironman for this July.
Holy cow!
I felt I love it. I love the sport, but anyway. So your question about time, business wise, I schedule it by the hour, like hours. Like I don't care how far. If I say I'm going to run a half an hour, I go run an hour. I run an hour. I don't care if that's 1 mile or 10 miles. Like, and you just realize, like, what I found out when I do these is we all have the same amount of time in a day. It's just how we use it. Does that mean, like I told you guys earlier, like I might not be able to read books while I'm training for this. I don't watch TV. Like it's just, you still have your normal work days. You just have to use your time wisely. Put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, that's inspiring, Mark. And if you need someone to push you, I will volunteer to ride in the car next to you while you're riding your bike or running.
Love it.
Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations on your success there. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Before we started recording, Mark, before we wrap up, before we started recording, you mentioned that you do like to read, and you just said you might have to stop reading as you train for your next try.
Sure.
If you have a few recommendations for books for the listeners, especially on the business side, are there a few recommendations you'd have for books?
Yeah, so one of them is a very powerful one. It's probably one of the only books that I've like. There's a couple chapters I've read probably 3 or 4 or 5 times. Not the whole book, but the Laws of Success. I'm looking that way because I feel like it's. I think it's Laws of Success, and they say get the original edition. And I'll tell you why. The first chapter, the one I don't know if it's the first or second chapter, it asks you what your purpose is. About your life, or we're going through this life and what your purpose is. And it was the only book I've ever read. When I read that chapter, I read it again and again before I moved on. I've never done that in my life.
Wow.
Because I couldn't answer that question, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of stuff in that book that relates to everything. Lots of good material. Laws of Success, that blows my mind. And business wise, there's a really good one, and I was every book that's come to me is referred by. One was Lead for God's Sake, and I say this, and like I'm a Christian man, but I don't, pardon me, I don't go out and preach, but it's not really tied to much religion, but it's the concept of leading, how to lead, and there's a good story behind it because it has a janitor of a high school coach, and a really successful business, or what we think is successful businessman. And it's these three guys on how they tied each other. And it was just a really good written story that teaches some good life lessons in there.
Awesome. Great. Well, I can see Garrett typing those in right now.
Yeah.
Order them on Amazon this afternoon.
Right.
So
that's exactly what I do. As soon as somebody mentions something that's pretty powerful, it's order it. Yeah.
Yep, for sure. Awesome. Well, Mark, I'll say one thing that our podcast guests have, I feel like every person we've interviewed, and Garrett will probably agree, the one thing that we hear over and over again is just do it. Like you mentioned, when you were 26, you didn't know what you were doing business wise. You knew you're a car guy. You knew the body shop side. You didn't know business. You didn't know accounting. You didn't know marketing, and you just did it.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to start somewhere, and then how do they say it? You just got to work through it, and you figure it out as you go. A lot of times, I mean,
Absolutely.
A lot of that. There's a lot of truth to that,
That's great. Well, Mark, if anybody listening wants to contact you, what's the best way that they can reach out and find you?
I just give my cell number on here. My cell number is 217-663-0449, or you could email me at Mark, M-A-R-K, at ProbstAutoBody.com. It's might go straight to my email. If I don't answer right away or don't email you, it's not that I'm ignoring you. Just like I said, I'm more than
just training for a triathlon. So give him a few hours. He'll get back to you.
Yeah. So my email, I used to be, sometimes it goes a week before I answer emails. Now it's just something that's kind of changed in my life as far as my importance of stuff. I welcome it. I love hearing stories. I love sharing stories. I think it's all pretty cool. I love what you guys are doing. This is great.
Great. Awesome. We appreciate that. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And for all you listeners out there, make sure you subscribe to the CIBL podcast on your favorite podcast platform. While you're there, please leave us a review. It'd be greatly appreciated. You can find us on social media, mainly on LinkedIn and Facebook, and connect with Garrett and I there personally as well. Until next time, Mark, you've officially been civilized. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/CIBL Podcast. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It's the civilized thing to do.